He's known as a creature of pure terror, a monster that inspires fear in all who gaze upon him. His name is Bigfoot. This hulking beast was said to have shaggy fur covering his massive frame. His eyes were glowing, fiery orbs of orange and red, and his teeth were sharp and jagged like knives. His massive hands had long, sharp claws that seemed to glow with weird energy. His most famous feature? His feet. Massive and heavy, with thick, sturdy toes that seemed to be able to crush anything in their path. Whenever he moved, the ground trembled beneath his weight, and his growls sounded like a volcano was just about to erupt. Sure, we've all heard the stories and seen the movies, but did Bigfoot really exist? Is he still out there, just waiting for people to notice him? Let's look at some of the information we do know for sure. Bigfoot became well known back in 1958 when a man from California named Ray Wallace claimed to have found large footprints near his work area. For years, his kids believed the whole thing was just a prank pulled by their father. People have reported finding many more footprints and a few handprints that were similar, but some of them were left by bears, others were fake, and many others can't be explained to this day. But the legend of Bigfoot predates this event. In 1955, a man named William Rowe said he saw a creature that looked partly human and partly animal while hiking on Mica Mountain in British Columbia. He later signed a document stating that the creature was about 6 feet tall, had brown silver-tipped hair, and had thick arms, broad feet, and breasts. Then there's the story of Albert Ostman, who claimed in 1924 that while he was camping alone near Toba Inlet in British Columbia, he was taken by a Bigfoot and held captive by the Bigfoot's family for a week. The man eventually escaped when the Bigfoot, father of the family, became sick after eating some of Ostman's belongings. There are no other Bigfoot memorabilia like the 1967 video called the Patterson-Gimlin film. Some people think it shows Bigfoot, but most scientists think it was just a person in a costume. The film is still often used by people who believe in Bigfoot as evidence that it's real. There are even scientists who think the film might not be fake. It's become more believable over time because of new scientific discoveries about how our ancestors walked. This opinion is based on the discovery of Lucy, a 3.2 million year old human ancestor that walked on 2 legs, which proves that our early ancestors were similar to apes and could walk like humans, just like Bigfoot. There's also a video on YouTube of Bigfoot in Provo Canyon, Utah that's very popular. The video shows a big black animal in the trees, possibly eating or looking for food. As the camera zooms in to get a closer look, the creature stands up on 2 legs like a person. Obviously, the people filming it got extremely frightened and ran away at once. The video was posted in 2012 and has been watched more than 7.6 million times. The people who made the video were not really looking for Bigfoot. They were simply camping and wanted to see some deer. They initially thought that they saw a bear until the huge creature stood up and looked straight at them. They ran to their car and left their tent and stuff behind. Their belongings are most likely still there. Skunk apes are said to be a species of Bigfoot-like creatures that people think live in swamps in the southern United States. In 2013, a video was posted on YouTube showing a potential skunk ape in a swamp in Mississippi. The creature in the video appears to be very strong and has short, broad shoulders, a small head, and long legs. Some believe the video is real, but others think it's a hoax because the camera often moves around quickly or the person filming runs away just when the creature is about to be seen clearly. This makes it hard for skeptics to believe in the existence of Bigfoot, and they've continuously asked for more evidence, like pieces of Bigfoot bones. This is probably the reason why 2 men claimed that they had found a frozen Bigfoot while hiking in Georgia. But what they had found turned out to be nothing more than a gorilla suit. They didn't back down, though. One of the men also later claimed to have injured and captured another Bigfoot in Texas in 2012. and even charged people to see it. But later he admitted it was fake too. In reality, we have no physical evidence that this creature exists or ever existed. Whenever people claim they have proof that Bigfoot exists, scientists usually find that the evidence is actually from well-known animals or humans. For example, in 2014, a group of researchers examined 36 hares that were believed to belong to Bigfoot. Almost all of the hares turned out to be from animals, such as cows, raccoons, and deer, as well as from humans. They did find something surprising, though. 2 of the hares were similar to those of an extinct type of polar bear. Scientists concluded that these hares could have come from a new type of bear, or a mix of different bear species. But they were definitely from a bear, not a primate like Bigfoot. Another possible theory that could explain these Bigfoot sightings is that the noticed creatures are, in fact, chimpanzees, gorillas, or orangutans. This idea is often mentioned in connection to skunk apes, because some people believe that the hot and humid climate in the southeastern U.S. could let this species thrive there. Sure, Bigfoot might be entirely made up, but it may not be on purpose. Our brain has a lot to do with it too, all because of a little thing called pareidolia. This is the tendency to see patterns or familiar objects in random or ambiguous things, such as seeing faces in clouds or animals in inanimate objects. It's a psychological phenomenon that can lead people to perceive things that are not actually there. We might be tricked by our brains into thinking we've seen Bigfoot, because we tend to spot human-like shapes in our environment. This often happens with blurry photos or videos of the supposed Bigfoot. Other people believe that Bigfoot is a type of ape that used to live in Southeast Asia and is now extinct. These people think that Bigfoot may have come to America by a land bridge that used to connect Siberia and Alaska during the last ice age. However, there's no evidence of this ape in America, and we don't know much about how it moved because scientists only have the fossils of its jaw and teeth to study. Some specialists believe this ape might have walked on 2 legs, but others say it walked on all 4s because it was so big. Some scientists believe that Bigfoot could be an extinct species called Paranthropus, which used to have a skull similar to that of a gorilla. It walked on 2 legs. However, the Paranthropus fossils have only been found in Africa, so there's no reasonable explanation for the Bigfoot sightings in America. Others believe that Bigfoot could be related to the Gigantopithecus, a type of ape that lived millions of years ago. Some people have even suggested that Bigfoot could be the missing link between apes and humans, but this idea is not supported by scientific evidence. There are theories that claim that Bigfoot was actually a Neanderthal. We do know for sure that Neanderthals are extinct because there are no known living individuals of this species. All evidence suggests that Neanderthals became extinct around 40,000 years ago, and there have been no confirmed sightings or discoveries of Neanderthals since then. Also, no remains of these species have ever been found in the Americas.
Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Chupacabra, Mothman, and other similar creatures are called cryptids. The pseudo or fake science that studies them is cryptozoology. But every year, real science refutes the existence of these beasts. So let's find out how some cryptid myths have been debunked. Let's start with one of the most famous cryptids, Yeti and Bigfoot. These 2 creatures are almost the same, but legends about them appeared in different parts of the world. Yeti is a big guy with white fur. Stories about it appeared in Nepal several hundred years ago. Bigfoot is a mythical creature of North America, specifically the Pacific Northwest, and legends about it appeared in the 20th century. Many people believe in the giant furry creature similar to a bear and a primate at once. Still, no one has ever presented objective evidence that this beast exists. You can find many photos of footprints that allegedly belong to Bigfoot or Yeti, but most are hoaxes. People like not only to believe in fantastic stories, but even to create them. So, to create traces of Bigfoot, someone made a large footprint of clay that had similarities with the human foot. The hair and DNA samples found in the woods, besides the prints, were of artificial origin. It was synthetic, or the hair of deers, bulls, and bears. Oh, and do you remember that famous video of poor quality with the Bigfoot? Perhaps the film was real and wasn't edited, but the creature caught on camera was probably an actor in a gorilla costume or something. Among all the animals, the American black bear is a perfect candidate for the role of Bigfoot. This giant beast is covered with fur and can stand on its hind legs. But the most exciting thing is that scientists have identified a pattern between Bigfoot reports and the black bear population. It turned out that people saw Bigfoot in the places where many bears live. Now, a similar story happened to Yeti. A group of scientists studied DNA hair samples that, as people said, belonged to the Yeti. They discovered that all these samples belong to rare species of bears and even dogs. This study may disappoint the fans of the fantastic monster, but it pleased the scientists. They got the information that can give a more detailed idea of the bear's evolution. Still, I'm sure there will be more Bigfoot sightings yet again. Reports of the next fantastic monster appeared in 1987 in Puerto Rico. An unknown creature entered farms to feast on goats, chickens, and other animals. Many said they had seen an animal similar to a dog, a reptile, and a rodent with an elongated face, large fangs, and scales. Some claimed they had seen a monster with smooth skin, little to no hair, and an unpleasant smell. No, it wasn't me. People called it the chupacabra. Every night, it would attack livestock, and farmers couldn't catch it. At least that's what the newspapers said. It was partly true. The residents did see a scary creature in the barns, but was it something fantastic? One scientist from the University of Michigan could solve the mystery of the chupacabra. He said that the monster was probably an ordinary coyote. More precisely, several coyotes having scabies. In Puerto Rico, some ticks climb on animals and cause itching. Because of this itch, coyotes lose their hair. This explains why many people saw bald monsters. The darkness, the fear of the unknown, and people's imagination turn the frightened animal into a monster. With a worse case of ticks, coyotes began to emit an unpleasant smell. Their skin loses its fur and becomes thicker. As a result, the animal turns into a chupacabra. It loses strength, so it chooses easier prey for hunting, livestock. This thing appeared in the middle of the night in the dense forests of West Virginia. It's a tall person with huge wings and glowing red eyes. You probably know it as the Mothman. People first heard about it in November 1966. In the small town of Point Pleasant, two young people were walking in the woods and saw a terrible monster, a massive guy with red eyes and 10-foot wings. They ran out of the woods and immediately called the sheriff. After that, the police began to comb the forest. A local newspaper wrote an article about the mysterious monster. From that moment on, rumors about the Mothman started to spread throughout the state and the U.S. It became as popular as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. People made a festival in Mothman's honor, and Hollywood created a horror film about it. But unlike most of the cryptids, Mothman has no photos or videos. Myths and legends keep this creature popular. By the way, the residents of Point Pleasant benefit as their town has become a place of attraction for Mothman lovers. People make good cash selling souvenirs with the image of the monster. Tourists spend money on hotels and excursions and contribute to economic growth. What's the point of destroying all the myths about Mothman if it's that profitable? Nevertheless, the legend appeared somehow, and a guy named Jonathan Gitter decided to discover its origin. He studied the first newspaper articles about the Mothman and read many books. Almost all of them were written by cryptozoology enthusiasts. All the documentaries and articles didn't contain anything scientific either. However, Jonathan learned an exciting story about Point Pleasant. At the beginning of the 20th century, factories for producing harmful substances worked here. When the plants closed, the leftover substances began to pollute the environment. Perhaps some part of the story about the Mothman is connected with people's idea of polluted nature. The context of the town's history gave birth to Mothman in people's heads. In addition, in 1967, there was a big disaster in the city. The Silver Bridge, the main entrance road to Point Pleasant, collapsed. The tragedy brought a lot of grief, and some residents believe that Mothman was involved somehow. Our next cryptid lives in the water. A monster called Stellar's sea ape is less famous than other pseudo-real creatures, but its appearance is quite specific. So imagine an oblong, thick body about 6 feet long, just under the height of an NBA star. The monster is covered with thick reddish-colored hair with a white stripe on its back. The head of Stellar's sea ape looks like a dog's. Pointed ears look up, and long whiskers hang from both sides of the lips. Stories about it appeared thanks to naturalist George Wilhelm Steller. According to his description, the ape resembled a walrus or seal, but pictures on the internet show something between a mermaid and a cat. A naturalist saw this creature during the Great Northern Expedition aboard the ship St. Peter in the 1740s. On this maritime expedition, he met many animals, including the sea ape, and described them in his diary. He was a well-known naturalist, so many believed in the existence of this creature. Some believe that the naturalist described ocean seals. Others think that the sea ape was the captain of the St. Peter, Vitus Bering. Steller had a conflict with the captain, so he could jokingly describe him as the sea ape. According to some records, Vitus Bering had a long, drooping mustache and a large belly. So, the most popular cryptid in the world has a chance to get out of the field of cryptozoology and get into real science. This is the Loch Ness Monster. It makes no sense now to try and tell truth from fiction among thousands of records and messages about it. But hey, let's look at a recent scientific study. According to rumors and guesses, Nessie is a descendant of an ancient marine dinosaur, a plesiosaur. But this theory was quickly refuted because plesiosaurs lived only in saltwater. However, a group of paleontologists discovered fossils of this reptile in a 100-million-year-old river system. And this system was freshwater. That means that plesiosaurs could have lived in the giant lake Loch Ness. Perhaps one of their descendants has been able to survive to this day. So go ahead, dip your toe in the water.
We're in Siberia. It's so cold here that freezing gusts of wind are burning your face. All that white snow seems to be blinding you. This place resembles Antarctica because of the permafrost. Recently, a group of scientists researched one of the local rivers. With the help of a drilling rig, they extracted several samples of frozen soil. The scientists were shocked to find living creatures inside the ice. Later in the laboratory, they realized that the creatures were microscopic multi-celled organisms known as deloid rotifers. These creatures looked like little worms. Scientists knew that these worms could live in frozen conditions for up to 10 years. But the age of the rotifers found in the ice was about 24,000 years. And after defrosting, they began to reproduce, as if they had been sleeping for several hours, not thousands of years. Further analysis showed that these organisms could stay frozen for hundreds of thousands of years. The rotifers might have lived during the time when people didn't invent the wheel yet. And this isn't their only superpower. Deloid rotifers are among the most radioactively resistant animals on Earth. They can survive in places where there's no oxygen and water. They can also stay alive in areas with high acidity and can live without food and water for a long time. By the way, these are not the only creatures that are known for living for thousands of years. Particular types of moss and some microorganisms are also almost immortal. Nematodes, also called roundworms, are some of the most adaptive varieties of worms in the world. Imagine the Eiffel Tower standing tall and proud. And now, let's make it 10 times higher and place it underground. Exactly at this depth, many thousands of feet under the surface, scientists discovered these creatures. There's no sunlight and almost no air in this place. And since it's much closer to Earth's core than the surface of our planet, the temperature here is higher than in the middle of the hottest desert. Millions of tons of soil above create insane pressure. But all this couldn't prevent life from developing here. When roundworms run out of air, food, or when the temperature becomes too high, they get into a unique state of stasis, or deep hibernation. In this mode, the worm's metabolism slows down, and almost all the processes in their bodies stop. The creatures can sleep for a very long time and only wake up when the environment becomes more livable. By the way, you don't have to go so deep underground to find these creatures. Nematodes are found all over the world. They can live in hot springs, deserts, high in the mountains, among the harsh ices of Antarctica, or inside animals and humans. Our next invulnerable creatures are tardigrades, also known as water bears. These are microscopic, 8-legged invertebrates closely related to arthropods. It's impossible to see them with the unaided eye. But a conventional microscope will allow you to see tardigrades in detail. They look like minuscule bears. They're called water bears because they need a thin layer of water around their bodies at all times. It's necessary to prevent dehydration. Tardigrades have been found in all kinds of environments, from ocean depths to sand dunes. They're incredibly robust thanks to their unique organism structure. Yeah, they look soft, but their body is covered with a tough cuticle. This coating resembles the exoskeletons of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed their old layer of the cuticle when they need to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The bears can survive at a temperature that's almost 3 times as cold as the temperature in the ice of Antarctica. Heat doesn't harm them either. They have been proved to survive at the temperature that makes water boil. Also, water bears are not afraid of radiation and high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of the strongest metals, but these creatures can withstand pressures 6 times greater. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field. This is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't need this protection. They can go into near-Earth orbit and come back unharmed, all thanks to a protein protecting their DNA from ionizing radiation. Like other immortal organisms, water bears can fall into a state of cryptobiosis. Tardigrades pull their head and legs inside their bodies and fall asleep. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, or experiencing a lack of oxygen, they will remain in this barrel form until the situation improves. So those are microscopic organisms and microbes that can only be seen through a microscope. But how about something bigger? Meet ironclad beetles. They live in the southwestern US and Mexico. These insects cannot survive high temperatures, live without oxygen, or in conditions of increased radiation. But their shells are so tough that they can only be pierced with a drill or hammer. Their durable exoskeletons are made of a special substance, chitin. It can also be found in the armor of crabs or shrimp. And still, the chitin of the ironclad beetle is so durable that it allows this creature to withstand the impact of a car moving at high speed. In times of danger, they can hide their whiskers and strong legs in special recesses in their shell. Other animals can't bite through the armor, so they spit the beetle out and leave to look for lunch somewhere else. As soon as the danger disappears, the bug stretches out its legs again and goes about its business. Also, the armor saves the beetles from dehydration, which is very useful in hot areas of Mexico and the southwestern US. Inside the exoskeleton, they can store moisture. In other words, these bugs can absorb water whenever they find it and transport this liquid inside themselves. The next creatures are incredibly fragile, but they know how to survive in places where almost no other animals can live. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can notice a pit. This is a mine leading deep underground. The air on the surface of our planet usually contains around 20% oxygen, but in the mine, it's only 10%. Inside the cave, the air also has an increased content of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. People can't breathe there without an oxygen tank. We can probably say that the water and air there are poisoned. Almost no animals would be able to survive here. Still, 48 species of living organisms have been found in this cave. 33 of them are newly discovered species. And they aren't the only microbes or bacteria that can't be seen without a microscope. Something bigger lives here. Strange white snails crawl over the walls of the mines. Transparent shrimp and a bunch of unknown kind of leeches swim in the water. White centipedes with huge whiskers and creepy white spiders run on the ground. And they all have been growing here for almost 5 million years. You might notice a water scorpion and another unidentified species of this animal. It doesn't look like its relatives living in hot sands or tropical forests. No living creature here looks ordinary at all. All animals are either white or transparent. They have no eyes, but are equipped with long paws and antennae whiskers that help them navigate in this dark space. The deeper you go into the cave, the less oxygen the air contains. But the number of living organisms is increasing. The air is filled with methane and carbon dioxide. All the inhabitants of this cave have never seen the light of the sun and have never gone out of the darkness. It seems impossible to survive in such conditions where plants don't produce oxygen. The answer to the question of their survival is hidden in a small lake. The surface of the water is covered with strange foam. If you look closely, you can see that this white substance is alive. It resembles soft, wet paper that is easy to tear. The thing is billions of living organisms, bacteria called autotrophs. There's much more carbon dioxide in the cave than there is outside, and these bacteria, like plants, absorb it. But they don't do this with the help of photosynthesis, which means they don't need sunlight. They use water for chemosynthesis. What these bacteria secrete is food for other bacteria, and these other bacteria are food for bigger creatures. A unique food cycle that you can't find anywhere else on the planet only exists here. Do you know that NASA explores not only stars, planets, galaxies, or black holes? Hard to believe, but yes. The agency also works on discoveries here on our home planet Earth. So what has NASA recently discovered? Is there life under the ice? While they were analyzing data recently, they discovered something unbelievable hiding under Antarctica's ice. And this discovery not only changes everything we know about the whole water system of the Earth, but it may also help with research about life in space. Humankind's existence might depend on understanding Antarctica and its secrets. So, the recent discoveries reveal vital information about our survival. But before we continue, let's see how much you know about this place, where it's only ice as far as your eyes can see. Antarctica is one of the world's 7 continents in the southern hemisphere. It's the 5th largest continent in terms of total area, and that means it's almost twice the size of Australia. Want to see real meteorites? Go to Antarctica. Due to its dry climate, Antarctica is one of the best places to observe space. But what's even greater is that you can find meteorites on the white surface of the continent. Scientists have already plucked about 45,000 meteorites from the ice, and they think they can see another 300,000. Since there aren't many terrestrial rocks there, it's easy for them to spot them, thanks to their dark color. Antarctica's dry desert environment also helps preserve them, even the ones that fell to Earth more than 1 million years ago. And can you imagine any volcanic activity in Antarctica? It's hard. But this place is where fire meets the ice. West Antarctica is where most volcanic activity occurs. Scientists recently found that 138 volcanoes exist in West Antarctica alone. Wow! You would think that Antarctica is always cold, but no. Its coastal regions can get as warm as 50 degrees Fahrenheit. But have you ever wondered what Antarctica would look like if there were no ice? It may seem unimaginable now, but it was not always covered by ice. That was 34 million years ago, though, so nobody could tell how the continent's surface would be without the ice. But NASA changed that. They generated computer simulations and created the most accurate map of it as of today. What they saw was incredible. The continent was not flat at all like it seemed. It's pretty bumpy with valleys, rolling plains, and high mountains. But this was nothing next to what they had discovered under Antarctica's ice. So, what is it? Drum roll, please. NASA found 2 new subglacial lakes. And what's even cooler about it is that they spotted these lakes from space. How is that? If your answer is high-tech satellites, then you're right. In 2003, NASA launched a satellite called IceSat. It measured ice sheet mass balance and cloud and aerosol heights. The satellite also helped create the ice-free map of Antarctica. In 2010, the European Space Agency launched the second satellite, Cryosat-2. It was for tracking the changes in the thickness of the ice. Then, in 2018, NASA launched the third one, IceSat-2, a follow-on to the IceSat spacecraft. It measured ice sheet elevation and sea ice thickness. It was NASA's most advanced Earth-observing laser instrument. It delivered the highest precision data. And when that was combined with the data from the other satellites, it was possible to spot these two new lakes near a pair of larger ones. But how is it possible that these lakes exist in the first place? The average thickness of most Antarctica ice is approximately 1.2 miles. However, it can get over 1.8 miles thick in some places, especially during the winter. So, you might think that there's nothing under there, but science says otherwise. It's not quite possible to see it with your bare eyes, but the continent's ice is slowly but constantly flowing in different directions under the force of its weight. But scientists could not figure out how water moved for many years. That started to change in 2007, when data gathered from the IceSat provided insight into what hides beneath the surface. They first discovered an entire network of meltwater lakes connected under Antarctica's fast-flowing ice streams, and there were hundreds of them. Scripps Institution of Oceanography glaciologist Helen Amanda Fricker figured that the elevation changes measured by IceSat happened because of the dynamics of these lakes. They did not hold meltwater statically. Instead, they were filling and draining continuously over time through a system of waterways. And as they did that, the ice above rose and fell. But where do they drain? The ocean, of course, and it drains a lot. A recent study, co-authored by Fricker, found that the drainage of one lake flushed as much as 198 billion gallons into the ocean in only 3 days. Countless mysteries about how nature works are still waiting to be solved. But finding the two new lakes will give scientists a better picture of how fast the Antarctic ice sheet will change as the climate gets warmer, and how this will affect global ocean currents and sea level rise. The filling and draining cycle of the lakes also cause the ice sheet to suffer cracks and crevices. So, the information they find from these new lakes will also give them a better understanding of the damage on the surface of the ice. They will also be able to assess how this filling and draining system influences the speed at which ice slips into the oceans and seas. And that means they can evaluate how the added fresh water may alter marine ecosystems. This discovery may also suggest whether life is under the ice. Wow! Scientists drilled through about 3,504 feet of ice and found that water samples taken from one of the lakes contained approximately 10,000 bacterial cells per milliliter. Such a high number of bacterial life is a good sign, because that means the icy waters might also support higher life forms, such as microanimals, and one of these new lakes might even be their home. But the most exciting thing is that the new lakes might help them understand whether life on other planets is possible. Scientists believe any life below the frozen surface of the planet Mars might follow the patterns seen in Antarctica's lakes. So, there is a possibility that they might find critical new information on the type of life that may have existed on the red planet. You wouldn't want to be there during the winter, though. The lowest temperature on Earth you can experience is negative 128 degrees Fahrenheit. In 2010, there was an even lower temperature of negative 135 degrees Fahrenheit. And you may feel this cold much worse due to the strong and dry winds. Did you know that the size of the ice surface on Antarctica also changes throughout the year? It's about 1.2 million square miles during the summer, but when it's winter, it grows to 7.3 million square miles. Yet, despite the change, it remains the largest piece of ice on Earth. Sorry, Arctic, you lose. Do you know these cute little penguins? Consider these animals the locals, because there is no native population in Antarctica. It's a no man's land, because no single country owns it. But do you know who really owns it? 5 different species of penguins, seals, and killer whales. Ha ha. Despite the continent's harsh conditions, You can visit it as a tourist for fishing and research purposes. Around 5,000 people reside on the continent during summer at research stations. But when winter comes, the number naturally drops down to 1,000. Antarctica's ice blanket makes up 70% of the world's freshwater reserves. Imagine what would happen if it melted. The global sea levels would be raised by almost 200 feet.
Harsh winds made this icy land unrecognizable. If you lived in Australia about 100 million years ago, you'd be wearing jackets and sweaters. But around 220 million years ago, this icebox of land was locked up in what used to be Pangaea. This supercontinent had Australia and Antarctica fused, including even South America and Africa. Scientists found out Australia was going solo at the same speed as your fingernails grow when it decided to cut ties with Antarctica. Before that, the Earth was just a giant floating ball of ice, and the sun wasn't as hot and fiery as today. You're walking along an icy path in the early Cretaceous period. You're looking for something to eat, but plant life is scarce. With no sunlight, there isn't any energy source for any edible vegetation, save for moss. So, finding a decent snack would be like bumping into a unicorn. You lurk around and find three-toed footprints leading to what looks like a frozen forest. You follow them, but still can't figure out who these prints belong to. You reach a dead end with the snow up to your knees and realize you're stuck. Suddenly, you hear some growling not far away. You look to your right and see a large theropod walking towards you. It's almost as tall as a giraffe and has razor-sharp teeth on its jaws. Ooh, lucky you. This dino is a carnivore and probably the CEO of the prehistoric meat-eating world. Scientists have discovered at least 15 other dinosaur species, including a 22-foot-long polar carnivore and a smaller predator that could easily run away from its larger mates. You try to swim through the thick snow as the beast with those large teeth is making its way to you. Good thing some trees don't let it move quickly enough. You manage to find a good rhythm, lift each leg above your waist, and make it out in time. As it gets closer to you, you make it through the snow and duck between some bare trees. You were lucky this time, but it'll be back for you. Fossils of plants and leaves show that back in those days, Antarctica wasn't as chilly as it is today, and the same goes for its northern counterpart, Alaska. Still, living between 70 to 100 million years ago wasn't that comfortable. The T-Rex was the undisputed king of the dinosaurs. Scientists found bones and fossils from dry places like Montana and Texas, but they were shocked when they found T-Rex fossils in Alaska. There were also fossils of horned, long-necked, and feathery dinosaurs in the Arctic region. Even though the T-Rex was an apex predator, it wasn't as fast as you would expect, but its size was enough to make you run for your life. One of the T-Rex's favorite meals was a duck-billed dino as big as an elephant called the Edmontosaurus, which dwelled in frosty areas. These creatures were probably slow migrators and wouldn't have been able to find any shelter to live through the harsh conditions. Their jaws show they were plant eaters and had to find some greens to munch on wherever they went. They were constantly on the move since they strolled rather than ran. Scientists claim they would walk at an incredibly slow speed of around 1 mile per hour. Even a tortoise could outrun them. If you were a dinosaur during those days, then you'd face one of the most challenging decisions of your life. Live with mom and dad or get your own place. No, actually, the choice was to stay for the winter or flee. The dinos that remained in the frosty lands made nests and stayed for the whole year. Some scientists debate whether these polar dinosaurs were warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Mammals and birds have internal mechanisms to keep warm, like using their muscles and metabolism. That's why our bodies shiver when we're freezing. Reptiles need to bask under the sun or lie next to any heat-producing surroundings to absorb heat and charge themselves for the rest of the day, just like you charge your phone, but they didn't have phones then. You continue walking around trying to find something to eat. Your stomach is growling and you feel you're getting weaker. The wind picks up and throws some snow at you. Good thing you're wearing a thick coat and some proper leg wear. You're getting tired and need to find a place to rest. But out in the wilderness, staying in one place is like offering yourself as an open buffet to any predator. You sneak out and manage to get into a small cave to escape the upcoming blizzard. You start a small fire to keep warm, but you turn around and notice that the cave inside extends further. You quickly make a torch and walk inside. Scientists said that some dinosaurs might have burrowed to survive the storms. They found some structures in southern Australia that resembled a habitat for burrowing creatures around 100 million years ago. After walking for hours, you finally reach the other end of the cave. But this time the weather is a lot better and the sky is crystal clear. You notice small footprints leading to the river. Strangely, there's no icy crust on the water, so you cup your hands and take a few quick gulps. Suddenly, a large shadow looms over you. You turn around and see a huge feathery dinosaur with bulging eyes. It kinda looks and moves like a velociraptor, and it's looking straight at you as if you were its snack. You get up slowly. You know you can't outrun it, so you have no choice but to fight it off. But then another figure appears nearby. A small herbivore called the Leolinacera, walking on two legs with a long tail, pops up and takes a sip from the river. The carnivore's attention has shifted towards it, and it forgets about you. Out of nowhere, a giant theropod rushes in from behind the frozen forest and chases them. You run back to where the cave was, trying not to get spotted. Humans weren't in the script then. 7 million years ago, Homo sapiens split from apes, becoming a fully independent species around 200 to 300,000 years ago. Neanderthals also thrived. While Homo sapiens were living and thriving in Africa, Neanderthals were migrating to parts of Europe and Asia, and were the first humans to live through an ice age. Scientists claim that Neanderthals couldn't compete with Homo sapiens and slowly disappeared. Some of them integrated with Homo sapiens. Earth has been through 5 ice ages. They're powerful enough to change Earth's physical structure permanently, and are partly responsible for landscape design. We're actually in the middle of an ice age right now that's been going on for 2.6 million years. But we happen to be living in the warmer interval parts that can last for tens of thousands of years. Neanderthals were shorter and stockier than Homo sapiens. They had wider noses and big skulls. According to scientists, they lived in caves and fashioned up clothes and tools made of stones and bones. They also had flat teeth on their jaws for gnawing and chewing, just like Homo sapiens. Ice ages played an essential role for Homo sapiens to adapt and survive. In their caves, they were able to draw scenes of hunting and gathering, and were the first ones to harness the power of fire for warmth, protection, light, and cooking. They also used an advanced system of sewing clothes, using bone needles and animal skins to make thick coats to warm themselves up. Ah, those were the days, huh?
Discovering hidden places on our planet is extremely exciting. Today, I'm taking you on a trip that you aren't going to forget anytime soon. But suit up, this is about to get very cold. You hop on a plane and land on the ice-covered island of Greenland. An unbelievable view of the Aurora Borealis, aka the Northern Lights, is greeting you. You can't believe your eyes. Your guide tells you how rare this phenomenon is. Usually, people spend days trying to hunt it down. You feel lucky and take your time to appreciate these beautiful dancing greenish lights. You're glad you brought your camera along, aren't you? Between clicks, you learn that the Aurora Borealis is the result of some rather rough events. This spectacular light show occurs when energy particles from the sun slam into Earth's upper atmosphere. On day 2, you continue to explore the place by air. This may not come as a surprise, but Greenland is one of the world's largest islands. This time, on board a helicopter, you can see the infinite icy landscape. In case you're curious, you're now flying over 656,000 square miles of thick ice. Oh, what's that down there? It looks like a family of polar bears. You don't want to get too close, of course. The conditions in Greenland might be too tough for people to live there, but some animal species do very well in this land of ice. Those are reindeer, wolves, and Arctic foxes. On your way to Greenland, you probably made a pit stop in Copenhagen. Denmark is one of the few countries that have commercial flights to Greenland. You didn't know this before, but you find out that the island is actually part of the Kingdom of Denmark. On a map, it's right between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. You're lucky to have a local pilot that tells you about the secrets hidden in this scenery. Under this 2-mile thick white surface, there's an entirely different world. A world filled with canyons, meteor-carved craters, and millennia-old plant fossils. You are beyond excited to go visit one of these spots, but of course, you'll have to use your imagination, as all of it is hidden under ice. Believe it or not, nearly 80% of the island's surface is covered with it. The first stop on your tour is Greenland's Grand Canyon. You land not far from it, somewhere in the northern part of the island. You may know that canyons are deep, narrow valleys with steep sides, but I bet you didn't know that the word canyon actually comes from the Spanish word cañón, which means tube or pipe. Now, this Grand Canyon has some similarities with the one in the US. First of all, in size. It's at least 460 miles long and up to 2,600 feet deep in some places. There's a true subglacial valley down there, and if you're wondering how this happened, well, the canyon had probably been formed by a river that had been flowing through Greenland before the ice took over. Oh yeah, Greenland hasn't always been covered with ice. It was once green, no pun intended. Many other icy places on Earth, such as Antarctica, were once covered in greenery. Scientists have figured out that in the past, Greenland was mostly ice-free. With the help of airborne radar, they made amazing discoveries. By the way, ice is invisible to radar technology. If you have trouble believing it, try putting an ice cube inside your microwave. It won't melt or heat up. A recent discovery of fossilized plants allowed researchers to estimate that Greenland used to be much warmer than they could imagine. 2021 research conducted by the University of Vermont found fossils of twigs and leaves, which left researchers very confused. They expected to discover sand and rocks in the deepest layer of ice, but instead, they found some clear proof of rich flora. Judging by what you've seen of the landscape, it's hard to believe that forests were once growing here. Today, you'll find some tundra vegetation on the coastal part of the island, and that's pretty much it. But according to the genetic material found in these fossilized plants, researchers believe the island used to be much greener. It's very likely that there were insect-filled forests with butterflies and beetles flying around, and the average temperature on the island varied from 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer to 1 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. NASA's Operation Ice Bridge has flown over Greenland more than 100 times. This has allowed researchers to create 3D maps of the island and figure out the age of each layer of ice in Greenland's ice sheet. Ice sheets can help answer many scientific questions as they form over the span of thousands of years. They're layers of snow on top of more snow. The snow gets compacted into ice, which in turn creates what we call an ice sheet. Remember those fossils we were talking about? They're believed to be from the Eemian period, which was 130,000 to 115,000 years ago. According to the groundbreaking 3D footage from NASA, we can see 3 distinct climate periods within the ice sheet. The uppermost layer is quite flat and uniform. If you decided to dig deeper, you'd find the layer formed during the last ice age. It's more complex and rugged. The ice there is darker than what you see on the surface. If you let your mind wander, you can picture what this part of the world looked like when mammoths were roaming around. If you kept digging, you'd eventually find leftover ice from the Eemian period I've told you about. Now, canyons aren't the only unusual thing found under ice. If you could sneak a peek under all those layers of snow, you'd see an impressive mountain range and also plunging fjords. In 2017, scientists created a map that showed what Greenland had looked like without all that ice. There was a bowl-like depression in the middle of the enormous island. This depression was most likely an ancient lake. Around it, there was a circle of coastal mountain ranges. This scenery probably resembled the landscapes of modern Patagonia. Big mountains with snowy tops surrounding crystalline lakes. This ancient lake in Greenland is a wonder on its own. Imagine a pit the size of Rhode Island and Delaware put together. The lake is believed to have covered over 2,700 square miles, and back in the day, it was fed by at least 18 different streams. These crystalline blue waters were surely very inviting, and freezing of course. But if you ended up going for a swim, I'd say be careful, as the water could get up to 800 feet deep in some places. On day 3 of your adventure, you discover a true under-ice water park. While you're wandering around the ice-covered island, your guide tells you to be mindful of the cracks in the surface. These cracks are responsible for the modern-day aqua lounge going on down there. Meltwater and rainwater flow down the cracks in the ice all the way down to the riverbeds. This forms a landscape of jewel-like lakes and streams filled with crystalline water. Researchers estimate that about 60 small under-ice lakes exist there. And yes, they're actual lakes. Perhaps one of the most impressive hidden features on this island is a meteor crater. Under the Hiawatha Glacier, you can find a 19-mile-wide impact crater, big enough to swallow the city of Washington. Apparently, a mile-wide iron asteroid struck Earth's atmosphere within the past 100,000 years and chose Greenland as its landing point. If anyone had been around to see it, they'd have witnessed a real show, a white glowing fireball cutting through the sky. Scientists speculate that if it had landed on an ice sheet, it certainly vaporized both water and stone. Someone standing hundreds of miles from the impact site would have heard a deafening thunderclap and experienced hurricane-force winds. But it actually makes sense. The approximate speed of meteors entering Earth's atmosphere is 45,000 miles per hour. For comparison, that is 2.5 times the speed of a spaceship. It's bound to make some noise and leave a huge crater in the ground. In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident. But in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Ötzi. He was named after the nearby Ötztal Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Ötzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Ötzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Ötzi, but other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had diplomatic mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers.
It was the beginning of the 20th century, and two rivals, Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen, set on their expeditions to become the first people in history to reach the South Pole. The race wasn't easy, and it ended tragically for Scott. Amundsen has won and set his tent on the pole before his rivals. A member of Scott's expedition known as Terra Nova, British geologist Thomas Griffith Taylor, not only survived the harsh conditions, but also made an unexpected discovery. He found a waterfall of what appeared to be blood at the rocky base of the glacier, which now has his name, in 1911. It took scientists more than a century to figure out what is behind the eerie coloring. A team of American scientists journeyed to Taylor Glacier with powerful electron microscopes to analyze its contents. Previous studies had scratched the surface of the Crimson Enigma, but no one had previously done a full-scale analysis of its mineralogical makeup. These researchers unleashed a whole arsenal of analytical equipment and spotted little iron-rich nanospheres. These teeny-tiny particles, 1/100th the size of human red blood cells, originate from ancient microbes. They flourish abundantly in the meltwaters of Taylor Glacier. These nanospheres are jam-packed with iron, silicon, calcium, aluminum, and sodium, forming a unique composition that paints the subglacial water a vivid shade of red. These nanospheres don't have the usual crystalline structure found in minerals, which is why previous detection methods failed to spot them. Taylor Glacier's icy depths harbor an ancient microbial community that has thrived in isolation for thousands or possibly even millions of years. This discovery could help us in the search for life outside of Earth. Dr. Ken Levy, a research scientist at Johns Hopkins University, has some impressive expertise in planetary materials and the analysis of Martian samples. He decided to find out what would happen if a Mars rover landed in Antarctica. Could it figure out what makes bloodfalls so mesmerizingly red? So, researchers treated bloodfalls as a simulated Martian landing site. They used techniques inspired by the rovers exploring the red planet. The samples they collected were sent to Johns Hopkins processing facilities. There, Livy unleashed the power of transmission electron microscopy and revealed the enigmatic nanospheres. He made the conclusion that our current methods of analyzing other planets' surfaces with rovers fall short. They can't unravel the true nature of environmental materials, especially on chilly planets like Mars. These materials might be super tiny and non-crystalline, throwing off our detection methods. To truly grasp the essence of rocky planets, we'll need transmission electron microscopes. Strapping one onto a Mars rover isn't feasible yet, but it could mean a start of a new era in space exploration. Have you ever seen a waterfall on fire? Every February, when the stars align just right, Horsetail Fall in Yosemite National Park gets a sensational makeover. As the sun sets, its rays hit the waterfall at the perfect angle, transforming it into a blazing display of vibrant orange and red hues. We don't know exactly who and when discovered this natural miracle, The original valley dwellers may have known about it, but they kept it to themselves. It wasn't until 1973 that photographer Galen Rowell captured the first known photo of the waterfall, bringing it into the limelight. Since then, the firefall has become a global sensation, spreading like wildfire on social media and drawing crowds from far and wide. This magnificent cascade draws hundreds of spectators every year, but they can only see the show under certain conditions. First things first, Horsetail Fall needs a flowing stream. If there's not enough snowpack in February, the waterfall won't have enough water to create the magic. The temperatures must be warm enough to melt the snowpack during the day. If it's too chilly, the snow will stay frozen, and the fiery spectacle won't ignite. Second, we need a clear western sky at sunset. Those sunbeams need a straight path to hit Horsetail Fall and make it come alive. And since the weather in Yosemite is ever-changing, clouds can magically clear up just in time for the show. If all the conditions are just right, you'll witness the Yosemite Firefall in all its glory for about 10 minutes. The mystery of the sailing stones in California's Death Valley National Park has puzzled scientists for years. Heavy stones seem to have a mind of their own and move across Racetrack Playa, a dried-up lake bed. They leave behind a trail on the cracked mud. There were all kinds of theories to explain this phenomenon, from magnetic fields or dust devils, which are strong whirlwinds, to mischievous pranksters. No one has actually witnessed these rocks in action, which only added to the mystery. In 2006, a NASA scientist named Ralph Lorenz entered the scene. He was studying weather conditions on other planets, but he couldn't resist the allure of Death Valley and those elusive sailing stones. He had an eureka moment while tinkering at his kitchen table with a Tupperware container. Lorenz filled the container with water, leaving a small rock poking out, and chucked it in the freezer. Then he placed this icy construction in a big tray of water with sand at the bottom and gently blew on it. The rock began to glide across the water, leaving a trail in the sand. Lorenz had been studying how ice can make big rocks float and move along tidal beaches in the Arctic Sea. Applying this knowledge, he and his research team figured out that, under certain winter conditions in Death Valley, enough water and ice could form to make the rocks float across Racetrack Playa in a light breeze. And as they glided, they left their mark in the muddy terrain. The River of Five Colors, Cano Cristales in Colombia, has the unofficial title of the most beautiful river in the world. For most of the year, it looks like any other regular river. The real magic happens between the wet and dry seasons, when the water level is just perfect. This unique river floor is lined with a special plant, and when the conditions are right, it bursts into a dazzling display of colors. Think vibrant reds, stunning yellows, and lush greens, all mingling with the blue water. It's like stepping into a living rainbow with 1,000 shades in between. This phenomenal display only lasts for a few weeks, from September through November. During Colombia's wet season, the river flows too fast and deep, covering up the river floor and denying the plant the sunlight it needs to turn red. And in the dry season, there's simply not enough water to support the vibrant life in the river. So you have to catch it at just the right time. The reason behind Maldivian beaches glowing in the dark at night isn't a mystery, but it doesn't make them any less impressive. It happens thanks to the bioluminescent plankton. These tiny creatures are like little underwater disco balls, emitting a cool blue glow when they are agitated or on the move. Imagine walking along the shoreline and leaving behind glowing footprints. You can even take a night swim amongst these magical plankton. Researchers have discovered that their bioluminescence is actually a clever defense mechanism against predators. When these microorganisms flash their little blue lights, it disorients and surprises their attackers. The plankton produces this light using a chemical called luciferin. These enchanting plankton can appear at any time of the year. The best chances of seeing them in all their glowing glory are from June to December. During this period, there's a higher volume of plankton in the seas of the Maldives, creating the perfect conditions for a luminous show after the sun sets and the night sky takes over. You'll only witness the magic of bioluminescent plankton when tidal currents bring them close to the shore in large numbers. It's hard to predict exactly when this spectacular show will happen, so make sure to do your research and prepare to take photos with a high ISO to capture it. exactly like it looks in travel catalogs.